the negotiations there will be a high-level meeting in September in New York on universal health coverage, which is also part of the Sustainable Development Agenda. It's about achieving that everybody has access to healthcare, to the healthcare they need, without getting poor because of very high health expenditure. And there again, we see in the negotiations that there is several strong voices who want sexual and reproductive health not to be included in it, while others, as a reaction to that, stay even stronger. And I think the Belgian government, the German government are part of those who want these issues in, because they're so important. If you want to achieve health, you have to talk about maternal health, you have to talk about neonatal health, and irrespective of whether that child was conceived in marriage or outside it should not matter, as Mali said, for the healthcare that the mother gets. And also in the Security Council resolution that you mentioned that Germany presented, I find it shocking to see that the international community is not able to agree that a victim of rape in wartime should not be able to have reproductive health services, which means to go to see a gynecologist who takes care of you, who tries to prevent you from getting HIV out of it, who tries to, if you're bleeding, if you're hurt, who helps you, and also to get psychological aid. And that the international community is not able to commit to that in 2019. I'm shocked about it, and I'm also shocked about what kind of sign that is sending to the victims of sexual violence and of rape in wartime, but also to a younger generation of women and girls growing up right now, where I ask myself, what kind of society, of international community is this, where these issues are not able, where there is no compromise around this. And this is why I think that, or maybe differently, at the same time we see advances in women's rights and also in LGBTI rights in so many countries. There's so many things happening. If I compare how I am able to live my life with how my grandmother, who was born in 1910, was able to live a life, it's very, very different. A lot has been achieved. And I'm really hopeful that we will be able to protect this and to advance it more. But in order to be able to advance it more, we also need to protect what has been achieved already, and we should not take it for a given and think that we cannot step back. I think we see it in many countries that it's very possible to walk backwards, and we should not allow that to happen.
Thank you. We have another 30 minutes, and I really want to give the floor to the audience. So we're going to take, Catherine's going to take your mic. And so if any of you want to ask a question, could I kindly ask you to state your name and where you're from, kind of, what you do?
Hello, my name is Habiba from Oman, a women's rights activist. Thank you for the documentary. This is a very sensitive issue, which in our part of the world we are not allowed. It's a big taboo. We're not allowed even to raise, or even it's not in our media. So I have just 2 comments. I think we forgot also to mention the right of a child. These children are socially neglected for the rest of their life. They have no rights. They can't marry normally, they can't, in some countries they can't have nationality, and they can't live, they don't have civil rights. For instance, in Oman, having sex outside marriage is illegal, and also abortion is illegal. But the funny thing is the child is abandoned. The government will give him the nationality and will be in a home, with a foster home. So some mothers actually, they rather to abandon their babies outside the mosque or somewhere, so they will get the nationality. Because if she admits that this child came outside of marriage, the baby will have no rights. So just that's what I want to comment. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ambassador of Zimbabwe. Just to say that maybe we need to start education at the societal level, because the gender you are born with automatically distinguishes you to what you're going to have access to. So we need our societies to recognize that girls or women are not objects of violence, or they cannot have access to this, even of education. In where I grew up, at the age when I grew up, when I was born, you were not entitled to go to school until you could only go to school up to a certain level, and after that, you're supposed to be married off. So there's need for society to appreciate the role of women. Okay. They are child bearers, like you were saying, but they are more than that. Especially now, I was reading that the UN demographic report says now there are double more women in the world than men. So maybe it's time for women to take their rightful position and assert ourselves. That was one comment I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you. I think and then we can go back to the audience. I think we can maybe touch upon the different things that were mentioned here, maybe more in depth, and also making the link with the SDGs. I don't know if Marlies or if Catherine, you want to talk more specifically about the impact on children's rights and on gender equality of girls, also not just waiting until they're women, but looking at stereotypes and educational means and measures to really, from the start of childhood, really kind of transmit this idea that all human beings are absolutely equal.
I think it's a very good point to mention these stereotypes that women live through already from a very early age, the way that we are being raised. And this is something also I think that in education, of course, you need to get the girl into the school, but I mean, schools have a very important role in to address these gender norms and to also engage the boys and the men to think about their own place, and their relation vis-a-vis girls and women. So there is no way that we can advance sexual and reproductive health and rights if we don't engage boys, if we don't engage men into the conversation, if we don't engage also communities. Because if you want to take sexual and reproductive health and also this comprehensive sexuality education forward, you need to build support also in communities and make them understand that that this is going to help the girls, that this is going to make a difference in the number of teenage pregnancies that they will see, in the number of young girls that because of early pregnancies might end up having lasting handicaps because of terrible delivery situations, or even not survive the delivery, where they're also their children, because they have lower birth weight, or more at risk. So all these things, through these big health issues, and nobody wants to lose a daughter or a grandchild, you can actually talk with society, with communities about this, with religious leaders about this, and build support. And engage men also in the importance of family planning, contraception, because as Catherine was mentioning, also in many societies, women don't even have the right to decide for themselves, to prevent them from getting pregnant. They need, the permission of their husbands, or so they cannot go out alone to go and see a gynecologist or somebody who is providing contraceptives. So I mean, these are the kind of hurdles that we need to address, and we need to do it together with men and boys, indeed. I don't know, Catherine, if you want to add something to that.
Maybe on a more positive note, after seeing the movie, I had to think about a program that I heard recently on the German public radio. Germany just celebrated 70 years of our constitution being written. And there is a program on Deutschlandfunk which takes transcripts from the debates that the people who wrote the constitution had among them. And there is one chapter on the role of children born outside of marriage and their right to inherit. And it was a big debate, and I think gratefully there were, I think it was 6 women who sat in that council who wrote the constitution, and they stepped up and they spoke out and they convinced men, for example, that there is a an article in our constitution that says that men and women are equal. When it came to the right to inherit and the position of children born outside of marriage, it took some more years. It was only 1970 that Germany changed the law in order to allow children born outside, or until 1970, children born outside of marriage were by law not related to their father, which means that they were also not allowed to inherit from their father. And of course this was related to the fact that it is very difficult for a woman to prove, or it was difficult to prove who the father of a child was. So, and yeah, but I find it interesting that it's not so long ago also in Germany that that we had a similar situation. Also in the generation of my mother, several of my aunts, they only went to primary school, the minimum years that they had to do, because after that they were to be married off and they did not need an education. And I come from an academic family, and still they did not send their girls to school, but they just wanted to marry them off. Luckily my cousins, the girls in the next generation, they had the opportunity to go to university and to strive on, but I think it's often good to think about how few generations it took in many countries to change things in order not to lose hope. My grand-aunt, for example, and then I will stop talking about my family, but she was forced into marriage. She was born in 1910 and she was forced into marriage. The family had money problems, and there was this elderly doctor who everybody knew was not able to have children because of a former illness. And my aunt was told, either you marry him or we will commit suicide, your father, your mother, and yourself. And she married. And that's not so long ago. But I think that a lot has changed. Nobody's going to force me into marriage. But I think that there is reason for hope, but it does not come from nowhere. We need to stand up for our rights, and we need to engage among these circles to break the taboos and to make our voices heard so that we can advance the rights agenda together. And now I really stop talking about my family.
It's short. We can stand up. Stand up is important. I think, but I think more, and we should put the questions. I think about my childhood. I think about what happened in Morocco. I think we should learn how we can put the questions. Because of my studies, I think in philosophy we should put the question why it is what happened. What happened in Morocco everywhere? The question is important. So is it education, schools? I think it's important for the young people. And the question is important because the people in Morocco and many countries, they don't put the questions. The answer is easy, and we take the answers. One's like, it's like that. No, it's like that. We should put the question. It's important.
Yeah. No, I think it's kind of coming back to what you were saying. One of the things that I really remember from this discussion is how the situation is maybe not degrading, but we are having more difficulties talking about these issues now than we had as an international community now than 20, 25 years ago. I'd also be interested in hearing from you, Mohamed. You made this film about, you made it about 8 years ago? 2010, so 9 years, yeah. You shot it. Do you have the feeling that things improved? Or, I mean, because we're now looking at the meta level of the UN, but it's maybe interesting to look also in some particular situations.
I can give an example. What happened now, what is the life of Nadia? Nadia's life, Nizha's life. Nizha's life is the same. She's working in Casablanca, but Nadia now is in, I don't know, I cannot say it's in danger, but she's married, she doesn't work as we should. No, it's not like that. It's a sad story. She's married, and what can I say, extremist comes, I think, from Syria in North Morocco, and now she's wearing the black clothes, and it's total, it's the same in Germany, total radical anders. Our lives is alive is others. So it's sad to say, and we say, I think we have shown discussed the the subject. Pest und Cholera. I don't think so. It's better. That's why I answer with the example, Nadia's life now. It is the situation in Morocco.
Maybe we have a few other people watching. Yeah, there's a microphone right there. Woman holding the microphone.
I am Arwa Khatabi, social and human activist, and I am originally from Yemen. We have a big problem with sexual problems. This is related also to religion. We have a big problem with religion. Religion control everything. And then when people act against these girls, they don't act from themselves. They act upon because they say they are against religion. And most of the girls, in Morocco, they are good. They accepted them, and they said they called them single women or single mothers. But in other parts of our countries in Arabic world, they killed them. They killed. There are a lot of girls they didn't kill, and I have just now in 2-3 weeks a very popular example in Yemen. One father killed his daughter, 10 years old. He just said she was talking with boys, and he killed her. So we need to change not just law, we need civil societies, we need secular societies to separate religion from state, and then new educational system and new laws to protect women and girls. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Caroline Gansdorfer. I'm currently at Terre de Femmes, a women's rights organization, also dealing with that topic, of course. And so we have this event today about sexual and health rights, and we talk about in the global discussions about pro-choice, but then there's also this other part talking about pro-life, and then the German law talking in the Strafgesetzbuch about these topics, so the criminalization of what we actually talk about at the same time. And you mentioned the international community and the UN having the constitutions and the CDF, everything also about the rights of sexuality and reproduction. And you mentioned on the other part the religious speakers from whatever religion it might be. What I want to say is I feel like we having a conversation in different languages. So my question would be, how can you bring these people together? Is there any way or a language to make them talk about the same thing? Because we talk about the rights of children, about the rights of the women, of the family role, and whatever is the family. But I feel like everyone is talking about their topic from their perspective. So where do you see a chance, at which place, or in which language, in which way to maybe talk about the same thing?
There were some other hands that were raised earlier. I don't know if this.
I'm Matthias Günther, I'm European expert on human rights and combating violence. And I have one comment, maybe I shouldn't tell that because I'm man, but I think that those women in this video, and I think a lot of women in this country and a lot of other countries, I think this is the biggest problem, is that they think that their strength is in men. And I think they believe that there is no women without men. And I think that this is the biggest problem, and I think we should talk about that. We should, I don't know, teach them or just tell them that you are able to be alive without man, because you can be just strong, even if you don't have this man or, I don't know, husband, and you have your children and you can be alive for them. So yeah, I think that's my comment.
Thank you. I think we had some very thoughtful elements here. Bringing back, do we have another question?
I don't have a question. I just want to give a kind of answer. I believe the item is most of the time right for the child, right for the woman. It would maybe not be bad to speak about first the right for the man and the duty for the man. If this is changing, maybe we also have a chance.
No, absolutely. So I think that's, I want to come back to my panel, all of you, for your last elements on this. Specifically on this universal language. I think that's a very important element. As we've seen locally, I mean, that's the interventions you made, and locally, nationally, some of these topics are hugely problematic, extremely sensitive, and it's like it's absolutely impossible to talk about. On the multilateral level, it's the same thing. It's very politicized, and it's just so sensitive that there's nothing you can do to kind of have a proper dialogue. Now, my question to you at the different levels that you work on would be, when you are talking to people who rather disagree with you or where you feel, and you film, you saw a lot of people, Mohamed, when you film the documentary, what is your approach to tackle this issue? How do you explain that women's rights, sexual and reproductive health rights, children's rights are universal rights, and human rights in general are universal rights? How do you go on to that discussion? How does that work?
I think the question is important. I put the question because when I discuss with the people about sexuality